My friend Earl Davis was one of the friendliest people I've ever met. He told me this story. He was driving through Los Angeles and he and his wife Jean got lost. They wandered around for a bit and then they wandered into an extremely difficult part of the city. Earl pulled over, rolled down the window, got out a map. This is before GPS. And he was looking at the map, trying to figure out where to go, when a young man came up next to the window with a gun, pointed at Earl, and said, "Give me your money." Earl did this. "Friend, we're lost. We're trying to get here, and we're not quite sure where we are." Well, the young man looked at him, looked at the map, then he did this. "Well, here's what you do. You got to get over here, then you head over, go to the light, turn left, and once you get there, you'll know you're good to go." Earl said, "Thank you," and he sped off. Now here's the thing about Earl, and by the way, I'm not recommending you do that every time in that situation. But when Earl said friend, he meant it. It wasn't dependent on what the other person was doing. What kind of friends do you have in your life? When it comes to interpersonal relationships, enjoy the journey.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to day 6 of our 8-day series on taking our first steps toward better health. I am excited to be with you once again. I know it is a Sunday, and perhaps some of you are, tuning in and thinking, should I do this or should I do laundry? Should I do this or should I, kick back and watch a movie? Should I do this or should I fill in the blanks for yourself? But I hope that by tuning in, you will experience some fresh understanding of specifically today what interpersonal relationships can look like, the healthy interpersonal relationships that enable us to really flourish and to be healthy. Yes, interpersonal relationships are a part of our overall health. And just as a reminder to you, let's look at our acronym, which is the word creation. The C is for choice, R is rest, E is environment, A is activity, T is trust in God, I is interpersonal relationships. That's where we are today on this day 6. 2 more days, and then we wrap it up for this time through our 8-day series. So, wherever you're joining us from, I hope that you will put in the comments a hello. You could say where you're joining us from and maybe answer this question. What is your biggest struggle, biggest challenge when it comes to interpersonal relationships? What is your biggest struggle or your biggest challenge when it comes to interpersonal relationships? Every day I ask you to put your information in the comment section because there are a few giveaways that I want to be able to share with you, and I'll share with those who have viewed the most times during our live times. Now, I realize if you can't catch this live, you'll catch it on the replay, and that's okay too. You can still comment there, and you might just be surprised with a prize still. Um, Today, we are again talking about interpersonal relationships, and we have a special guest joining us. And so, let me tell you a bit about him. Richard McNeil has a passion for teaching, leadership, creativity, innovative strategies for evangelism, discipleship, and outreach. As a theologian, he has a great burden on his heart for people who have been misguided, discouraged, and hurt by the misrepresentations of the gospel. He utilizes his skills in teaching, preaching, and counseling to make theology easy to understand while helping people come to a deeper understanding of who God is. And so, without further ado, I want to welcome Richard to this conversation tonight. Richard, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. This is a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. I feel honored to be invited, and I'm happy to share. Happy to share. So I'm glad to be here. Glad
Wonderful,
to.
wonderful. Well, Richard, let's talk about interpersonal relationships. Simply put, and here's a definition, a basic definition: interpersonal relationships are the social connections we have with others. Okay? Interpersonal relationships are the social connections we have with others. So the
Yeah.
question is, how do your social connections now differ from, say, 10 or more years ago? How do they differ now?
Well, they differ. They differ on a number of levels, right? For one, I'm not the same age. I'm not as you would say, immature.
Yes,
I would
yes.
hope. I would hope. At least a little bit more mature now, right? I would hope. I will hope for that. But also, I'm at a different stage in life. I'm now a
Hmm.
parent. I
Hmm.
now have greater responsibilities. Uh, I hold a position of leadership. So, my interactions are definitely different now than they were before. With friends, you could hang out. Back in undergrad, you had a lot more time to just spend just chilling. Different things like that. Where now your time is definitely scheduled.
Yeah,
Your time is not as fluid as it was before. So you have to be more
right.
diligent. You have to be more, how can I put it? You have to be more responsible with
Hmm.
how and with whom you spend your time, right?
Hmm.
Because especially at this later age in life, you have to be very careful about whom you associate with and how they're adding value to your life.
Right,
So definitely
right.
now I'm more mindful of that. And
Hmm.
it has definitely, caused some changes along the way. So yes, definitely different.
Definitely different. And like you said, it's that maturity piece is pivotal. That maturity piece is pivotal.
Yes.
Now, friendship is one particular area of interpersonal relationships, and men are sometimes
Come on.
criticized for not having friends or for having that one good friend from back in the day that they kind of hold on to as like their, friend for life, but they never even really connect anymore. Um,
Mm.
has having friendships ever been a challenge for you? And if so, how so?
I would say yes. Having friends has been a challenge, especially when it comes to the issue of trust, right?
Mm,
Trust is not easily earned, right?
yeah, yeah.
And trust develops over time. So
Mhm.
you need time and experiences with other people in order to really develop those
Right.
deep rooted friendships. Right now having associates, having people that you associate with, or colleagues here or there, for lack of a better way of putting it, those are really a dime a dozen. You can develop those surface level relationships with people. I know of her, I know of him, but really having lasting, deep, true, rich connections with others, it
Mhm.
takes time, and you have to now invest in others. Now, the criticism that men may not have as good of connections or as many connections, I don't believe that's necessarily true, because men do connect. We may
Okay.
connect different ways. We may do different things together, but we definitely do have those connections. We definitely do. So I would push back a little bit on that on that criticism. Now, I definitely would say that as individuals, myself included, we have to be more intentional on devoting time to staying in touch, devoting time, scheduling time to hang out with others, spending quality time with others, right?
Mhm.
Where, for men, and I'll say this because oftentimes we may not even realize it, but men men will spend time with each other in doing other things like playing sports, right? We'll get together for a basketball game, and it's actually while we're playing the game that we're actually talking. After the game, it might open us up a little bit more. We drop our guard a little bit. We're a little bit tired, So our defenses are a little bit down emotionally, and we open up, right? And then we start to really share emotionally what we're going through, stuff like that. But if you get two men within a room and say, all right, sit and talk together, it may not happen that easy. It's going to take a lot more. But
Right.
hey, I have a project for you guys to do where for men, what we've noticed, of course, is not for all men, but in most cases, once our hands are busy doing something, then our mouths and our brains emotionally will start to open up. So
Mm.
for wives out there, try that. If you really want your husband to really open up, go out there while he's cutting the lawn, or doing some physical labor or something, or playing a favorite sport, then you really get him to open up. Not while he's watching a game necessarily. No, that won't work. That won't work. But while we're active with our hands, our mouths and our minds will really open up.
Mhm. Mhm. That's so funny. Not during a game. There's a time and a place. And it's good to
Definitely.
recognize the time and the place. Um, and I think that the criticism is is definitely, at least in large part, there because as men and women, stereotypically our relationships look different, right? And so it's even from person to person, like I could think, oh, you're not doing something the right way because you're not doing something the way I would do it. And I think that's sometimes where we get caught, in comparing how women relate to friendships versus how men relate, to friendships. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's helpful too for any men who may be feeling, um, maybe disconnected. Maybe they've moved somewhere new, um, and maybe based on where they were before, it wasn't at all a challenge to get to know other men. Just it could be stage of life, location, right? There are all these different factors. And now they're in a different space, and just like the culture of the space is different. Maybe the city isn't as warm fuzzy or whatever the case may be. And there's that struggle. Okay, now, what do I do now? And so I think that that can be helpful, counsel to men out there, any of whom maybe have just made or are about to make, a major transition, moving from one place to another. Like, hey, remember, this is generally, how we connect with each other.
Oh yes, oh yes, and I can definitely identify with that. For me personally, when I was living in Florida, every Sunday morning, our church, we had a lot of youth and young adults there. So every
Mm-hmm.
Sunday morning, all the men would get together and we'll play flag football.
Mm.
All throughout the summer is flag football, and then when it's winter, we'll go indoors and we'll play basketball or something, right? So I had gotten used to that, so that was always there. And in moving away, it's like all of a sudden, bam, there's a major change.
Yeah.
Um, the church group that I'm part of, there are not as many youth and young adults there. There aren't any men to play with. It's like, wait a minute. So now I have to be extra intentional on seeking out other males. I have
Mm-hmm.
to join like the YMCA, or go to the gym and play basketball at the like LA Fitness and different places like that, where I have to now be intentional on seeking out others who sharing the same life stage, sharing the same age category with me, or even younger, right? So that way I have others I can interact with. So yeah, there's definitely some changes that will happen just due to migration, just
Mm-hmm.
wherever you may go, traveling,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, it's interesting. I've been reading, especially during the pandemic, and one of the things that is a growing, almost a secret pandemic is this issue of loneliness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I love that we're tackling this topic of interpersonal relationships, because I believe this is the antidote or the cure to what many Americans especially are struggling with. There's
Yeah.
an epidemic of loneliness right here in America,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic only exacerbated it. It just made it
Right.
even more prominent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the cost of being lonely is extremely costly,
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
where many, because you had to be in isolation and different things like that, they're struggling. And it's highlighting the fact that the relationships that they thought were meaningful one, they were
Mm-hmm.
really just surface level and shallow
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. So many are really struggling right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so real. So real. Um, I took for granted, especially early on in the pandemic, it's like, okay, let's hunker down. And I had three other people to hunker down with, my husband and my kids, right? Um, and thankfully, we already knew some of our neighbors, which I think is part of this loneliness piece too. At least in the pandemic, you've still been able to go outside and walk around your neighborhood. But if there's nobody that you can actually pause and chat with, even at a distance, like
Hmm.
it's just in your face that much more, right? Like I'm not connected. And so I took for granted the connectedness that we had here. And there came a point, because one of our neighbors, they have two kids just like us, and they're both like, the oldest is a little bit younger than our oldest, the second is a little bit younger than our second. So they play together, and there was one point at which, like, we have a fence between us, but it's not a privacy fence. It's like this old wooden thing. So we can see each other super easily. And there was one day early on in the pandemic when the kids are like on either side of the fence. And we're just feeling like, oh, this is awful. Like the poor babies can't even hang out together like they're used to. And eventually, when more people were talking about having pods and whatnot, my husband
Hmm.
approached, I think the wife one time when we were outside and was just like, can we be, can we be a pod? And she was like, yeah, and so we agreed, like, hey, we can hang out. We weren't in each other's homes, but we were happy to have the kids interact, go into
Yeah.
each other's yards, and interact. But so many people didn't have that and still don't have that. And and that then, like, within the framework of church life, was heightened even more, because for so many, if they go to a weekly worship service, that was when they were feeling some kind of connection, right? They live
Yes.
alone, for whatever reason, and this would have been like at least once a week. At least once a week, someone's going to say hello, someone's going to give them a hug, something. And then that dropped off too. And
Ooh,
so, I mean, this loneliness piece has, yeah, it's been huge. It's been huge.
so
Ah,
true. So true.
but let me not keep on talking because I'm supposed to have you talking. Um,
I don't mind. I don't mind.
so, according to research, having someone in your life who really cares for you, feels close to you, loves you, or wants to help you can significantly lower your risk of premature death and disease. Okay. I, Reading this, I know I'd heard something like this before, but hearing it or reading it again, like, really, like, hit me and made me think twice about it all, right? Having someone,
Yeah.
I'll read this again, someone in your life who really cares for you, feels close to you, loves you, or wants to help you can significantly lower your risk of premature death and disease. Like, that's huge. So for you, how do your relationships impact your health? How have you seen your relationships impacting your health? And that could be for good or for bad.
Yes. All right. Let me start with the bad. Right. Let me start with the bad. Where there's certain relationships that I had to be intentional on diminishing, not
Mm,
completely cancel, right? Because I like to be of service to others, but there's certain relationships that I really had to evaluate and recognize where I was being used,
mm,
right, or being exploited by others,
mercy.
where I had to make sure certain boundaries were in place that I did not allow said individuals to continue to use me or
Mhm.
just take advantage of my kindness, right? So
Mhm.
so as far as the negative side of things, I had to do some house cleaning, if you will, right? I had to do some self evaluations and evaluate
Mhm.
certain relationships and make sure certain boundaries were in place, right? I'm a social individual. I feed off of social interaction. I love being around people. If
Mhm.
I'm in a crowded room, I'm like, yes, I like that. I feed off. Where my wife is completely different. You know, if she's in a car room, she's more like, she more, you know, into a shell, which different strokes for different people, right? I'm more of the
Right.
extrovert. She isn't, right? So, you know, so I love having friendships. Now, especially and I feed off the presence of my wife, right?
Mm,
So I like to spend time. So spending time with my wife and the children, that has been extremely beneficial to me. I have
mm.
grown because of that. Whenever I'm able to interact with others, I I flourish, right? Now, even when it comes to my health, I love to be active, but I love to be active with others. Like if I have to exercise alone, it doesn't really happen. But if I have to go play ball and I know, hey, I'm gonna play.
So I think we're back.